Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Maoist-Third Worldist Collective. Today, I will be offering a critique of sorts on an organization called Platypus. Platypus is a controversial organization. It does regard itself as being Marxist. It has some connections with the Spartacist League, which is a Trotskyist group, a Trotskyist tendency, but it is no longer connected with Trotskyism, and it denies any relationship right now to Trotskyism. There are aspects of Platypus that I find to be interesting, and there are aspects of it that I find to be extraordinarily ineffective. And the parts that I find to be ineffective are basically that Platypus never comes up with any solutions. For example, their motto is, "The left is dead, long live the left." What the heck does that mean? Well, I guess if you're into Platypus, you know what it means. I am not entirely sure what it means. I think, however, that what they're saying is that the left, as it is historically constructed, or perhaps as it has developed since its inception, has not really worked, and it's basically died. And so effectively what they are trying to do is to formulate a kind of new leftist movement. Not the new left, which I was a part of back in the late 1960s, but a kind of new leftist movement, or maybe a new left. But the way they're doing it is something that I don't entirely grasp. And perhaps that is my own failing, but I know that if it's my failing, it is also the failing of a lot of other people, because I am not the only person who is confused about Platypus. A lot of people don't seem to understand what they're trying to do. Now, they do host conferences. Their conferences include people from a wide variety of different tendencies presenting their views. They have a YouTube channel, and on their YouTube channel, again, they have presenters from a wide variety of tendencies, each presenting their own particular approach to Marxism. But exactly what are they trying to do? That is the part I don't understand. I don't know what their ultimate objective is. So what I'm going to do in this video is first praise one limited aspect of Platypus, and then discuss it a bit, and then continue with my critique as best as I can. The part that I like is what I already mentioned. The left is dead, long live the left, at least as I interpret that. Certainly, there really is no viable left, especially in the first world. Now, Platypus is not obviously a Maoist third worldist organization. They are not third worldists, so they don't see things the way I see them, but they recognize that the left has largely failed. I was a part of one of the last two movements in the United States that champion Marxism, or the left in general, also anarchism, the New Left, the US New Left. There was also a New Left in Britain, which has some similarities to the US New Left. But after the New Left fell apart and another movement sort of tried to replace it, the New Communist Movement, the left basically died. And there really has not been a successful left since that time. And to me, that is very sad because we need a left. Now, is there an organized right in the United States? Obviously. It's called MAGA. MAGA is an organized right. It's called QAnon. Assuming QAnon even exists anymore, I'm not even sure, but I assume it exists. Originally, it was the Tea Party. Then it became the alt-right. All of these are, in a sense, a continuity from one to the other to the other. So the right has been developing in recent years, unfortunately, I would say, but the left has not. There really is no leftist movement. The closest thing that we have to a left right here in the US is social democracy, which many advocates think of as socialism. And they think of Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, as being democratic socialists, which they are not. They are social democrats. They are not interested in democratically establishing a socialist society. They want to put band-aids on capitalism. That is what Edward Bernstein, the founder of evolutionary socialism, wanted to do, and why he had that long-standing dispute with the great Red Rosa Luxemburg. Rosa wanted to establish genuine communism, which interestingly at that time was called social democracy, showing how words change in definition. Now social democracy is something entirely different, but back then social democracy was communism. Today social democracy is progressivism. So they're really two entirely different animals which simply share the same name. But there really is no left in the US. There really isn't even much democratic socialism in the new left, at least as I understand democratic socialism. There are the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, but the DSA is basically the left wing of the Democratic Party. I met this very interesting woman in a Chinese restaurant that I go to regularly. Fascinating individual. She was incidentally a trans woman. And we had some really nice conversations about that as well, because one of my closest friends is a trans woman online. So we discussed that, but primarily we discussed her involvement in Democratic Socialists of America. And I said, well, as a communist, I really don't like the Democratic Party. Most commies don't like the Democratic Party, and that includes me. And so we never spoke again. I did text her one time. She responded, but she responded in a way where I could tell she wasn't really interested in continuing the conversation, because her activity is mostly as a part of the Democratic Party, which is really what the Democratic Socialists of America, or the DSA, is. It is legally a separate entity, but functionally it is really a part of the Democratic Party. Now, Platypus is not. Platypus is its own thing. Although, as I said, it emerged partially from the Spartacist League, which is a Trotskyist movement. It now regards itself as non-Trotskyist. So let me go ahead and read you a couple of things. If you wondered why I was wearing my glasses this time, which I haven't been doing recently, this is the reason why, because I wanted to be able to read a couple of things. Okay, so let me read a few things, just brief excerpts from other things, not the entire texts. Here's one particular paragraph. From what I have been able to discern from Platypus's synthesis of Marxism, and that's really what Platypus is trying to do, is to create a kind of new synthesis of Marxism for the 21st century. I would argue it's not a very good one, but that's what they're trying to do. There are two tendencies that have overwhelmingly influenced the vision of Platypus. One is Trotskyism, primarily as embodied by at least two of the founding members' encounters with the already severely degenerated Spartacist League of the late 1980s and early 1990s, but also reflecting the struggle for Leninist orthodoxy embodied in the early Spartacist League and its predecessor, the revolutionary tendency of the SWP, which stands for the Socialist Workers' Party. Platypus uses the literature of this tendency in their study groups, as do we. And so that's their comments on that. Then they continue. These Platypus founders are also aware that the Spartacist League's rapid expansion in the 1970s came as the upsurge that we have come to think of as the new left was waning. And I remember that because I was a part of the new left, and I remember it waning. I experienced it waning. I was a part of it. When I came back to school in 9th grade, the new left at my school was gone. I looked around the country and I noticed that the new left was gone everywhere. That was the end of the new left. The reason why the new left died is complex, but mostly it was because we overpromised. We were driven by optimism, and our optimism was too strong. We were not driven by what Marx said, to focus on current material conditions. If we had done that, perhaps the new left might have been more effective. Okay. The Spartacist League at its best was able to win some of the more thoughtful elements of Maoism to Trotskyism. I'm not sure what they mean by thoughtful elements, but I don't care really. So that's whatever that particular writer thinks. It also competed in its interventions for Students for a Democratic Society, which I would have joined, but I was too young to join at the time, and other campaigns with groups such as Progressive Labor. So Platypus was an ancillary and subordinate interest in Maoism as, quote unquote, the other, and the more prominently visible currents of Marxism in the 1960s and 1970s, really early 1970s. I want to acknowledge that, but not go into details since our time is limited. And I think that this has already been addressed in the May 2011 forum at which our comrade Tom Riley spoke in a lecture that he gave called The Marxist Turn, the New Left in the 1970s. Well, really, it should have been called the New Left in the 1960s, because the New Left was born in the 1960s, largely under the influence of the sociologist C. Wright Mills. It died in the 1970s. So I think that title for the talk was poor. Okay. Since they are a lot less interesting today, Progressive Labor meaning, and the Kasama Project has been hosted before and perhaps represents a less useful role in this battle royale, we are here today with our comrades who represent the most activist element of what remains of Maoism in the US, they are the logical choice. Well, there, I would strongly disagree. What they are calling the most activist elements of Maoism are not the most activist elements of Maoism. They're referring to the work of Bob Avakian. Now, I am very familiar with the work of Bob Avakian. When I was a kid, I used to hang out in the Revolutionary Communist bookstore in Manhattan. And I would have chats with members, even though I was a kid, I was like 13, 14 years old, but I would have chats with members of their group. And I was never really convinced that they were on the right track. In fact, Bob Avakian, who is admittedly a very smart fellow, has changed his mind several times. So he has actually developed a series of different Maoisms. But to say that Bob Avakian represents the most radical or the most effective or the most progressive or the most prominent, prominent maybe, aspect of Maoism is, I think, really, really poor thinking. I don't agree with that at all. Avakian is not a stupid man. Certainly, there are many intelligent people who are in Avakian's group, but I personally see the Revolutionary Communist Party of Avakian as more of an opportunist tendency than anything else. They basically seize upon whatever is the current fad and they reinterpret it for their own members. That's pretty much what Avakian does. So calling that radical? No, I wouldn't call that radical. I think that's a very questionable interpretation of Bob Avakian's group. Now, let me go on. I've already incorporated and primarily discussed aspects of one article. Now I will move on to another one. This is an interview which is published at libcom.org, if you want to find it somewhere. This is what Platypus says. Okay, so these are the words of some representative of Platypus. It's not clear who it is, but somebody from Platypus is responding to these questions. Okay, so the question is, what's the idea behind the Platypus Project? Well, it's primarily Trotskyism, primarily the Spartacist League, and secondarily some influence of Bob Avakian. At present, the Marxist left stands in ruin. Platypus is a project for the self-criticism, self-education, and ultimately the practical reconstitution of a Marxian left. That's what they claim. Platypus contends that the left suffers as a result of the accumulated wreckage of intervening defeats and failures. Well, they're right about that. From a very partial and distorted memory of its own history, okay. And at crucial moments, the best work on the left is its own critique, motivated by the attempt to escape this history and its outcomes. The left is in such a grave state of decomposition that it has become exceedingly difficult to draft coherently programmatic social political demands. At certain times, the most necessary contribution one can make is to declare that the left is dead, and which returns to their motto, the left is dead, long live the left. Kind of weird, but okay. We take our namesake from the platypus, the animal platypus, obviously, which suffered at its moment of zoological discovery from its unclassifiability according to prevailing science. We think that an authentic emancipatory left today would suffer from a similar problem of misrecognition, in part because the tasks and project of social emancipation have disintegrated and so exist for us only in fragments. Okay, maybe. We have organized our crucial investigation of the history of the left in order to help discern emancipatory social possibilities in the present, a present that has been determined by the history of defeat and failure on the left. As seekers after a highly problematic legacy, from which we are separated by a definite historical distance, I don't think that's true. How are they separated from it? That's where they came from. We are dedicated to approaching the history of thought and action on the left, from which we must learn in a deliberately non-dogmatic manner, taking nothing as given. Okay, here's my problem with that. They claim to be non-dogmatic. Okay, they can claim it, but Platypus is known for making regular attacks on other Marxist groups. Now, I might make those same attacks. I think that most Marxist groups are worthy, maybe not of being attacked, but certainly worthy of being critiqued, because they focus primarily on the first world. Platypus is not a third worldist group. So, to my mind, their critiques are unsatisfactory. But at least they're trying to critique it, I guess. But their attacks are sometimes rather vicious, I would say. I have watched some of their speakers, leaders, representatives make YouTube videos, which you can find yourself on the Platypus YouTube channel. It's not hard. And they're kind of nasty. Some of them, not all of them, but many of them, in my view, are kind of nasty. There is no need to be nasty. What's the purpose of it? Why be nasty? One can be critical. One can have an approach to Marxism which examines the defects of the left, which to me primarily is first worldism, the acceptance of first worldism, which has admittedly failed and which Platypus does not appear to understand. So their critique of Marxism is really their critique of first world Marxism, but they're not proposing third worldism as an answer to those critiques, as a resolution to those critiques. Okay, let me go on and read some more from this particular article on libcom.org. We take the question of internationalism seriously. Now, bear in mind, of course, internationalism was established by Marx and Engels in the first sentence of the Communist Manifesto: workers of the world, or proletarians of the world, unite. But the kind of internationalism that they are referring to, from my reading of this, and I am welcome to being corrected. If anybody from Platypus sees this podcast, please correct me. Please make a comment below this. Please make a response video. I will watch it. And I will make my own response video to yours if you like. If you don't want me to, I won't. Whatever you want, I will do. I am open to dialogue. Dialogue, I think, is the best tool that we have available to us at this point. Okay, so let me go back and begin this paragraph again. We take the question of internationalism seriously, and we do so through hosting the conversation at different cities, such as in Greece, Germany, Canada, US, and UK. Okay. So what? So they're bragging about going to different cities? Who cares? You don't need to go to different cities. There is such a thing as called Zoom, or if you like Skype, or if you like Paltalk, and there are other programs which are similar as well. So why are they bragging about going to different cities? Who cares? I don't need to go to different cities. I can just watch somebody on YouTube, or I can join a conversation on Zoom, which I do frequently. And mostly I just sit back and listen. I very rarely participate. I mostly listen to what other people have to say. I'm a sociologist. I am an observer. Sometimes I am a participant observer, which in anthropology is called ethnography, a term we sometimes use as well. But usually I just observe. I don't participate. That seems to be helpful in my case. But again, going to different cities, why is that being emphasized? Well, it's being emphasized because that's what they do. Platypus is an organization which travels around the world and lets other people talk and has conversations with people, which they don't need to go to different cities in order to accomplish. They can do it on Zoom. So from my perspective, Platypus has really not come up with any solutions. They're talking, nothing wrong with talking. I talk too. I'm talking now. I talk in my podcasts. I talk with a lot of people, both Maoist-Third, Worldist, and others. Talking is nice, but talking needs to be productive. Talking needs to have some objective. What is the objective of Platypus? That is one thing that I'm unclear about. Let me continue reading. Through our reading group, okay, so they read, good. And public forums. Again, talking. They have public forums where they talk. We try to raise the same issues in numerous contexts and thus build a continuous conversation through multiple locations. Again, who cares about multiple locations? You can do that on Zoom. Anyway, the similarities of the problems at an international scale faced by the left are greater than we might have expected. By our efforts to educate ourselves on the question of an international left and capitalism, through posing it in different concrete circumstances, we hope to provide a space for renewed debate. That's what they do. They debate, or sometimes they don't debate and they just let people talk, and unexpected agreements. So if they agree, I guess they don't expect to agree. We try to clarify problems not only in specific locations, but to understand what internationalism and solidarity could mean today. We hope to provide the left with a platform on which it can clarify and transform itself. Platypus as a project, though it started in the US, was able to grapple with a problem that is, understanding the global defeat of the left And yes, that is true. They're right. The left has been defeated, I guess globally, primarily in the West, but to a lesser extent, I guess you could say globally. And the possibility for global human emancipation, that I think is great. I would love to see global human emancipation. But when I consider the work that Platypus has done, I don't see an emancipatory project. I just don't. When I look at Maoism-Third worldism, I do see an emancipatory project. When I look at the critical realism of Roy Bhaskar, I also see an emancipatory project. When I look at Bob Avakian, when I look at the Spartacist group, when I look at Platypus, I don't see an emancipatory project. And I admit it may be because of my limited knowledge of Platypus. And I do have a limited knowledge of it. I'm certainly not claiming to be an expert on Platypus by any stretch of the imagination. My knowledge of Platypus is, I'm not sure if I would say superficial. Maybe it is superficial, kind of, but certainly my knowledge of Platypus is limited. It is limited. I have not made an exhaustive study of Platypus. On the other hand, I have made exhaustive studies of other Marxist currents or tendencies. I'm not sure a Platypus would regard itself as a communist tendency. Maybe they just see themselves as a forum. I don't know. But regardless, that is my problem with Platypus. I agree with their motto. The left is dead, long live the left. Good. They're beginning with a nice statement. But what are they doing to assure that the left continues to live or is reborn? I guess talking. And talking is not bad. I mean, we learn by talking with each other. We learn through conversation. There's nothing wrong with conversing with each other. But if that's all we do, I don't see any point to it. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Maoist-Third Worldist Collective. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.